Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. First of all, kudos to you. I know the feeling of learning in public and being the technical person when you don't feel super into being the technical person. So you nailed it. Um, I'm really, really excited to be with you all today to share some of the AI adoption patterns that we've been seeing that have worked. And just first, a little bit about me. If you don't know me, my name's Meg Smith, and I'm one of the co-founders of Cloverbase and the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge. So my co-founder, Mark Smith, has been in the Power Platform and Dynamics community for many years. He's an MVP, and together we've been working over the last couple of years on how in our business, we've been doing enablement training for Microsoft staff. So that involves us at the moment really looking at this question of how is Copilot being adopted and how can we help sales teams and technical experts to really bring this AI platform to life for the organizations that are looking to adopt it. And then we also run the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge, which is a career program for people who work in this space. And we've got lovely participants and alumni on the call today. So thank you so much for joining and for sharing your, expertise with the world, which is really at the heart of what we encourage people to do through the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge. It's for you to understand what it is that you want to offer the community and your customers that you work with, and be able to articulate your value so that you can also get that job, get that contract, go to whatever the next level of success looks like for you. So that's a little bit about me. There's a couple of adoption patterns that I want to talk about today. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. In fact, Mike and I are writing a book on some of the 12 patterns or the 12 ideas of Copilot adoption that we're seeing across organizations around the world who are winning with Copilot and really adopting AI. These are just the three I wanted to focus on today because we've seen them across some of those early adopter program stories that you might be familiar with if you've had a look at Copilot. Now, I know this is a Power Platform user group. We also think that the Power Platform community are some of the best placed to really lead in the Copilot world because of so much requires, and I know Shamim's going to talk about business data in the next session, but so much of a successful AI adoption relies on a successful data strategy. So I'm going to be talking about AI today, knowing that the role of the people in this user group is often coming from the Power Platform perspective. I think that's a really great place to come at it. So the three patterns I want to talk about are executive sponsorship and why that's actually proven to be critical in successful AI adoption. We want to talk about change management on purpose, and the role of champions communities. Before I do that, I've shared in the chat a link to the Miro board. If you've just joined, I might just re-share that because I know sometimes you can't necessarily see what's been shared before you joined. So if you can, jump on across to Miro. Before I start talking about those three patterns, one of the things that we talk about a lot is, you probably feel this as well, I imagine, in your roles, that's at the moment there's so much hype around AI. Sometimes it feels like the goal or the ask is we just need to do AI. We need AI in this project. We need to make sure that it's got AI in it. Tell me about AI. But it's really important to understand why what we're trying to achieve, what is the problem we're trying to solve. So before I jump in, I'd love if we could jump over to the Miro board. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can access that, if you've been able to join? Oh, I can see some people on the board. Fabulous. So if you can't, if you need to zoom out, you've got controls to zoom in or out. This is we're going to do a what's on your radar exercise. So the idea with what's on your radar is you can grab any one of these post-it notes. You should be able to grab and edit them and add your comments or add your thoughts. You can also, if you can see this menu on the left, you'll be able to add a sticky note as well if you would prefer. And what I'd love you to do is think about, how do we measure success when it comes to AI implementations, AI projects, AI strategy. So I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes. So give us all 5 minutes. Start firing away your ideas. The way that the radar works is we're going to get sort of what we think are the most important into the middle of the circle. The next important or secondary importance goes in the outer ring, and then the last is sort of tertiary importance. If you feel really strongly about the importance of your idea, feel free to plot it on the radar. Otherwise, just leave it off to the side, and we'll spend a little bit of time together discussing where we think the importance. So the question is, how can we measure success of AI adoption, and what ideas can we use for continuous improvement once we've had that first success? Sound good? Cool. I'm going to set a timer here. And I do have some music, but I think you might not be able to hear it based on how I've shared. No music? No, okay.
You can hear the music.
You can hear it? Oh, fab.
Yeah.
Sharon can't. No, that's funny. Hey James, just to explain too, in case you missed it, so we're just putting ideas onto the board about how we can measure success of AI adoption. Like, how do we know we're winning? How do we know it's successful? And then we'll have a little chat about it.
Rightio, thanks.
Awesome, great ideas coming through here. We'll have another couple minutes and then have a chat. And I'd love if you want to volunteer. I will ask for volunteers, or else just start asking for specific people. But if you've got an idea that you want to share and start to plot it on the radar, feel free to start doing that. Brilliant, looking great here. Another couple seconds, just checking I've got them all. Cool. Awesome. Wow, there's some brilliant ideas here. Thank you, everyone. I'd love to ask the person who wrote, I love the matching too of the pink post-it note to the pink circle in the middle, accurate answers, insights, and info you can trust. Does the person who wrote that want to say a little bit more? Hey, Shameen.
Hi. Yeah, because I think especially now, for example, Copilot in Power BI, there's like a little message at the bottom that says inaccurate answers are possible. Can you hear me, or is it there's like an echo? Can you hear
Oh,
me?
I can hear you. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And so I think users quickly kind of lose trust in it if the answers that they are getting are not, are not accurate, and then they just stop using it basically because they think, it's not useful. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I love that. And it relates to the idea I can see here around, does it solve a problem? We've got solving actual business problems. Can it solve a problem that was not able to be solved through business processes? Is there trust that this is valuable, right? But what about this one here? Improved customer experience and our engagement. Who wrote that, and where do we think we should put that on the radar?
Hi, Megan. Judy. And it looked like my camera is working very well, so I apologize for that. Well, it's
That's
not working.
okay.
I was thinking the overall reason for implementing these new tools is to improve the customer experience. So whether that be in surveys, so in having the trust established is really critical, I think.
Yeah.
And their engagement because they trust you and they're having a better experience is through that so-called reputation that's going to be established. You're going to get net new people knocking down your doors, and I think that is a real measure of success.
100%.
That's where it's coming from. So it's a bit high, like pie in the sky, like it. No, but everything that's written here contributes to that. But the end goal is to improve.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. Audio's coming in and out a little bit, but I really like what you said there about um, coming back to why are we, in business? Who are we serving with our products and services? And are their experiences improved by our use of AI? Because it does require, again, this point down here, that trust. There's trust in the information. There's trust in the accuracy of what we're dealing with. Now, I'm just going to zoom in over here because I see I also felt a little bit bad because somebody had lined up beautifully these ones here, but then I wanted them a little bit closer to the radar. So I just want to pick one, but if these are yours, feel free to jump off mute and talk through a little bit, particularly around this retention and continuity and investment. Like, so we know we're successful if that investment continues. Who's that one?
Yeah, that was myself, David Glass, that kind of put that. Yeah, I think, with all these pieces of work that we kind of do, I think it's important to kind of just break it down into stages. So running from kind of POCs, even if you want to jump in that far, but I think it is important just to kind of take customers through that journey and be upfront on that journey. But these are kind of stage gates and pieces that we're going to stop at, just checking how we're doing. Yeah, and should we continue? Yeah, I think there's lots of questions we could ask along that journey, but I think it's important as well. But hopefully the outcome is then retention and continuing to invest in what we're doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I put that quite important, right? Because it knows we're on the right track if there's value. But I think sometimes it comes down to how is that value being communicated? How have we scoped out our goals from the start? And then the measures by which we can say, yep, that's working, or no, that's not. I love that. And then I just want to spend a little bit of time up in this corner before we jump into the content a little bit. Thinking about the users and the feedback. I've kind of clustered together some ones I feel that were relevant. But if one of these is yours, feel free to come off mute and share a little bit more about the impact on the users.
So I guess the one that I put up, the use for mentorship and upskill, not just getting things done faster. In 2 or 3 years' time, when you're starting to start having a look at your graduates come through and start to try and upskill those graduates, are they just relying on an AI to do the job for them, or are they actually learning from the AI while doing that job, being supported by the AI? Because at the minute, there's quite a big opportunity where people just go, I'll just do it, copy and paste it into an AI thing, and I'm not actually learning anything. It's just sort of all being done for me. Don't give a damn. So you're not actually engaging with the topic. You're not actually learning anything. And then in 10 years' time, all those graduates are now starting to progress up the career ladder. They're all a bit useless. So making sure that you're using AI to use it to mentorship the grads as well.
Yeah, I love that, and Carl, I totally laughed at that comment, but it's true, right? That if we teach the next generation that are coming through, there's AI tools or AI-enabled technology the same way that I learned technology when I started in my career, which was very different. It was learn what the software does, click here, do this. You can learn that once, and then over your career and your experience, you're building on that. You might be adding new context on a different project, or you might be adding new skills once a quarter when there's new releases. That's not how AI technology is working anymore. We're talking about constant change. We're talking about Copilot every week or every 2 weeks having new features. So we're having to build in that resilience of what this tool can do today is not what it will be able to do tomorrow. And that's a different way to learn. I think I agree with that, James. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time on the how do we measure success, because that having that intention and having that why is certainly another pattern that we've seen in the successful adoptions. But coming back to the kind of three I wanted to touch on today. The first one is executive sponsorship. And this one, I think, is we underestimate the importance of an executive sponsor. And the kind of trap is in a little bit what I've just said there. It's not an executive sponsor. It needs to be a group of people in the leadership in the organization that you're working on, whether that's the company that you work for, or oftentimes if we're working for a partner, that is going to be in the companies who are your clients, who are your customers. Who in that organization is really committed to and understands why AI is critical to that project and to the role of where that organization is going to go with AI-enabled tools. So spending a little bit of time understanding what makes a good executive sponsor is important for all of us to do, because it's going to help us spot where the sponsorship is insufficient. Thanks, David. The executive sponsor needs to be active. So they talk about the ABCs, and these actually come from ProSci, the change management certification program. It's a really great framework. We'll talk a little bit about change management next. But these ABCs of executive sponsorship, so they need to be active and visible and consistent in their approach. So it can't be like stand up at the company meeting once and say AI is important and then disappear, or never actually use Copilot themselves, or never actually show up again with that message. They need to be consistently beating that drum. And then they need to be someone who can bring their executive peers, so that's called a coalition of sponsors. And that is, the research shows, it is so important, because it can't just be one person who sticks their neck out and says, we need to be investing in this. This is important, because then it's too easy to have, priorities change, or if one person in the organization has said, this is why we should be sticking with Microsoft, then someone else might have an agenda as to why they advocating a different technology or a different thing. It really needs to be this network of leadership that have gone on that journey together, that have the right AI and data literacy baseline, so that they can build that into their strategic thinking of where the organization is going to go. And then that C is for communication. So how is that executive sponsor communicating the importance and the value of the project to their reports? Some of ProSci's research in change management highlights that the most influential person in a person's individual change journey is their manager. And so that manager needs to be able to see the executive really bought in on this, so that they can effectively communicate to their team, hey, I know you're busy. I know that we're talking about a reworking of how we operate and how we deliver our services. This is why this is important to you and your goals. This is why it's important to us and our team. And so it's really important that when we're engaging in projects, or we're even starting projects, we ask that question of, okay, so who cares about this in the organization? Who's the executive sponsor on this? How does it factor into their plans? And how are they measured? How is success measured for them? If you've got this group of executive sponsors, why do they care about this, and how will we know if it's successful? Because then we can shape so much of our messaging around those priorities. And I really like this exercise of mapping your stakeholders. So understanding where they are at, and are they someone who maybe you're needing to mentor a little bit more, or to really enable to be a great key stakeholder? Or are they someone who might be a little bit of a risk? And what other things we're actively working on there? This actually comes from the Copilot Success Kit. So if you are adopting Copilot, if you are leading this kind of change in your projects, I really recommend, I'll drop the link in the second as well. Adoption.microsoft.com has Copilot Success Kit adoption resources. And this is from there, and a couple of the slides I'm sharing are so worth having a look at if you haven't already. Another kind of mechanism that we're seeing in organizations that are, early adopters of Copilot, they're in that sort of that group or cohort of people, you'd see their names rolled out as case studies from Microsoft when talking about Copilot. My favorite one, the kind of hero case study I really dove deep into for a while, was Lumen Technologies. Has anyone read that case study? It's really powerful. It's included in a lot of the collateral, but they are an example of an organization who really jumped at their chance to be part of the early adopter program. Their coalition of executive sponsors included all of the senior leadership. The CEO is actually ex-Microsoft, so you can imagine they have this understanding of technology that might be different from other C-suites, but they were able to say, as a leadership, we're completely bought into becoming AI enabled. We're going to be rolling this out to our teams. And one of the biggest impacts they saw was rolling out Copilot for Sales. So as part of Dynamics, as to their salespeople would spend on average 4 hours prepping for sales meetings, and with the help of Copilot for Sales, that reduced to 15 minutes. They could do higher quality prep for their sales meetings, and they actually then backed that out and said, well, if we're saving 4 hours per sales engagement, or per salesperson per week across a year, we're going to conservatively estimate that's worth $50 million to our organization. Based on the size of this sales force and what they could then do with that time. So when you've got that sort of value being looked for and then articulated at your executive level, and then they're looking together as an AI council. So an AI council is thinking about that cross-functional leadership group, right? It's a group of leaders from, it can be IT, HR, change. I've also seen ones where they include like an employee representative or a frontline worker representative in that, because this AI council is going to shape and hold account the organization to the way that it's using AI. Is it, there's often the AI Council will be responsible for ethical checks as well, and commitments, but also setting that direction and taking on feedback from that real life experience of their people. So there's, again, in the Success Kit, there's some really great resources there's a white paper on what an AI Council should look like. And then one of my big things at the moment is a 10 minutes a day daily practice with AI. I've been doing that and more with my friend ChatGPT for a long time now. Knows me pretty well. I'm currently investing in my relationship with Copilot. So I just wanted to share an example of how you could start a conversation with Copilot if this is the first time that you are thinking about executive sponsorship or interacting with an executive sponsor. Try this one and obviously customize it to make sense. So I've said, write a guide to being an effective executive sponsor for a transformational AI project. The executive is the head of HR for a legal practice with 1,000 staff. Change that for whoever you're working with, right? Consider the ABCs of executive sponsorship and provide an action-orientated guide. And I did this last night just to check that it returns something valuable. And what I'm really loving about using Copilot is that it was able to, in my organization's Copilot, say, hey, this is from your documents, this is from your files, here's an outcome, and then here's also an outcome from the web, so other, like, going broader. So you can imagine that if you are doing projects over time, or you've got the Success Kit and you've loaded it to your SharePoint, those are the types of files that are going to be brought into that output as well. Cool. So the second pattern I want to talk about is change management. We got any change managers on the call? No? Okay, cool. That's fine. I think change management is something that can be maybe not always included in our projects. It's something that you should become a champion for change management. We talk about this on the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge a little bit, that this role of change managers, like project managers, they're able to really be a critical component between getting from the promise or the sale of what this AI adoption project should offer to actually making that a reality. And I saw this quote from Satya Nadella just recently, where he was talking about change management in specific relation to AI. And I had two thoughts when I saw this. One, it was like, awesome, right from the top, saying this is important, this is a good chance that we're going to start to see more investment in change management and realization that that's necessary. But I also, James, a little bit interpreted this as not just change management as a discipline in technology implementation, but actually, how do we change how we're working? And that is, I think, for AI, a little bit different than, say, a change program that's necessary when you're changing the payroll system that your company uses. Oh, awesome, Sharon. And also looking at how are we as individuals and people going on this change journey. But looking at that impact, or that the reason that change management is so important when we're rolling out new enterprise technology or new technology to the organization, is really looking at this difference between someone using a tool. So, you have a Copilot license assigned, usage. It's loading on your apps that you're using, that sometimes, depending on how your reporting is set up, can count as usage, right? But actually, adoption means that people have gone from, okay, I've got access here at deployment, right the way through going on this journey to being proficient. It's been this deep habit that becomes part of everything we do. And the ProSci research there that is quoted as being, it has a 7x impact on the likelihood of success. And there's another great study that's referenced in the Success Kit, which I highly recommend going and having a look at if you're interested in human change and human behavior. And this again relates to the experience gap of change. So how do people in your organization experience change? And there's some really interesting statistics or insights from that show that how a leader who might be making the decision about this technology, how they experience change, is generally more positive than their employees do. That they, when it comes to how it's communicated to them, they're often given more context about why it's important. They're often given more upskilling opportunities, and they're generally at that step closest to what's happening. Whereas if we find that there's not effective change management, there's not effective upskilling and communication, then employees become disengaged and they don't really understand why it's important to them, and we're not going to get to that kind of dream up to the top of the right of that chart, adoption and proficiency. And then I also thought this was really interesting, that's from that study as well, which I'll link in the chat in a minute. But they looked at what's the difference between high performing organizations and those that take a people-centric approach to change are reporting much stronger outcomes. They're able to drive that organizational change. So these are the differences in that survey of, say, what's typically happening when change happens. So how are their employees experiencing change compared to the high performing organizations that are getting incredibly high rates of employees saying they felt considered and respected, they felt included in decisions, they were able to give feedback and that was actioned, and they were just really encouraged to celebrate their wins through that change as well. Another prompt potentially for you to have a try. So one of the things that we learned through the change management certification, and thanks Sharon for sharing that, I'd also highly recommend doing some ProSci training if you get the chance, or if you is this one here. So how act as a change manager, help me brainstorm ways to overcome resistance to change when it comes to adopting AI, provide tactics and frameworks to help me scale use of AI in my organization. One of the things that I took away from ProSci when I did my change management certification was this acknowledgement that resistance will happen. Whenever there's change, there will be resistance, and that the fact that there is resistance doesn't mean the change has failed. It's a natural part of it. So looking at some of these techniques and tactics is important. The last one pattern I want to talk about is the importance of a champions community, and that somewhat gets nested under change management at times, but I think it exists as a pattern that's important to call out in its own right, because I've been describing when we've been looking at these case studies and what's happening in these early adopter programs to inform how we're training Microsoft staff and how we're trying to scale AI adoption. I sort of see the successful ones are really doing this tops down. We've talked about executive sponsorship, and bottoms up through the champions community. And one of those approaches on their own don't work. Whichever one, it can't just be tops down, and it can't be champions driving change from within the organization without that executive support. It's really both together. Champions, in our community is a tactic that has worked really well for a long time. I'd say you probably all are champions in the organizations or in the role that you do. We're talking about people who have found that moment where they recognize for themselves the value, and they're able to then share that with other people and really scale change. So there's a couple of things. Again, I'll send the link to the adoption.microsoft link, because the Success Kit has some really great frameworks and checklists. I also think it's worth calling out that Microsoft are highlighting the role of the champions community. It really becomes embedded in an organization's culture. So being able to customize it and adapt it to make sense within the culture of that company is going to be so much more powerful than coming in and saying, Microsoft said we should have champions, who wants to be one for Copilot? Really being able to use language. Champions might not be the right word. It might be a different, there might be an existing nomenclature, I don't think I've said that word right, but the naming convention that will inspire people to get involved within the organizations you're working in. Lean into that. But really it's about, the program should be, encouraging people who want to be trained and want to gain this knowledge, for people who are curious about Copilot, let's give them a chance to further that skill set, and encourage them to share and train their peers, because we know that peer-to-peer learning is so is much more impactful in so many ways when we're trying to drive this change. And then looking as well at how are we reinforcing that behavior? How are we celebrating their success? How are we rewarding them? That doesn't just look like, that looks different for everybody. I was saying to Mark last night when I was thinking about this, like, I can remember when I was at Google, I think they would do, honestly, like, money prizes a lot. Like, I think I won $150 for commenting on a video once internally. That it was very nice, but it wasn't more motivating to me than other benefits that might be like leadership development, or in the big scheme of things, an extra day off goes a really long way too. Really looking at, like, what is the culture of the organization, or what matters to the employees, and how can you reward them and elevate them for giving their time to become a champion. And then, yeah, really looking at, like, what is the action plan off the back of that community who work hard, meet regularly and share their knowledge, and how does that then go back up to that AI council? And Honeywell is a good example of this. I'll also share the link to an article about how they as an organization have embedded, they call them AI ambassadors, in each department and each business unit, that meet regularly, and then they gather feedback on use cases and what's working and what's not and what people want, and then that bubbles up to the AI Council every couple of weeks. They review that in line of other priorities, ethical, their kind of commitment to ethical AI, and then build that into the work program. So the champions are motivated to gather that feedback and share it, because they can see that it's actually being used to shape how they use AI. So I've got another example there around how we can use Copilot to help brainstorm ways to incentivize people to become those champions as well. I think that could be a good way. When I looked at the case studies, my kind of like big takeaway that I just wanted to leave you with was the companies that are winning with AI and are really changing the way that they operate, they are empowering their people to innovate with AI. They are upskilling them, like James was saying, they're giving them the time and the encouragement and the structure to not just have training one day and sort of say, great, now you know Copilot, off you go. Really looking at the consistent practice over time and demonstrating the value that they're offering to the organization by doing that work. So that was what I had prepared to share. I've got questions here, but I also am really conscious that I might have gone a little bit over time. I don't want to take away from Shamim's time. So Sarah, let me know how we're going for time. I'm also happy to take questions, as a follow-up. You can message me or email me as well.
I think we can make time for a couple of questions if there are any. If we run over at the end, Shamim, I don't mind. You don't?
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Cool, I'm happy with that. Any questions?
No, nothing for me. It's interesting. I've seen a few talks on Copilot and security and adoption, and it's such a big thing, isn't it? There's so much to consider. And another experience that I have is speaking to people that are going into that role of head of AI now, into organizations that haven't had that role previously. And again, when I asked this question, do they know what they expect? What do they want from AI for the senior leadership team? And the answer was like, no. Is the data sorted out? No. And it was kind of, oh, great. So what do they want from you? Like, and the other thing is, I think going into a role like that, there's a lot of people looking for these kind of jobs as well. I'm getting asked more and more, are there any jobs for head of AI? And that means something so different in so many places, doesn't it? And I think, I don't know, something that kind of crosses my mind is, if you are going into a role like that, understand the businesses, understanding before you set yourself up for a potential fall where they think you're not delivering on something they're not ready for. That's me just dumping all my thoughts that I've had over the last few weeks onto you all, but it's huge. Where do you start?
Yeah, I think we need to use I think especially I think of that same challenge, Sarah, in terms of the partner scenario. If you're supporting a lot of different organizations, how can we use Copilot to help us understand the common challenges for the roles of the stakeholders we're dealing with, whether it's head of AI, which is new. There are other roles that we're talking to, like what does a CEO think about this? How are they measured? Talk to me a little bit about the specific industry for this customer that I'm going to talk to, so that we can go in really empowered to be empathetic and to give that message based on what they're going to care about.
Definitely, because it can be quite boring, can't it, to begin with, if data strategy isn't there and there's no governance, that job isn't quite as exciting as let's just get AI doing everything.
I have Kia ora, I have a question. So last week I went to an event and it was actually Serco. So Meg probably knows Bob that runs Serco, and he's just done a big AI initiative with the business. And he said what was interesting, so it's probably more a key takeaway, is that his finance and his law department, so non-tech people, are the ones that have embraced AI the most and have really taken off. Because I asked him how he kind of adapted with the change, because they did everyone had to attend AI sessions and stuff like that. And he just said it comes from leadership, but he was just impressed that the non-tech people have embraced it and have just loved it, and how much it takes off their workload. Because I was just more curious about the change management, because I can just see that's so crucial to a business, and if you don't get it right, how it could impact putting AI into your business.
Yeah, Bob. So Serco is a New Zealand tech company that are they do. I think it's like a competitor to Concur Travel, so it's corporate travel management, and they have clients in America, and so they've got this scale, and I think they've gone through an acquisition process as well, where they've acquired companies. And I was talking to him about how are you upskilling your workforce across different roles, across different geographies. They've got people all over the world, and he, in my opinion, the way they've approached it is what more organizations need to be doing, which is going, actually, we're going to stop at this point in time, and we're going to make sure we're intentionally taking everyone in the business, not just one department, not just IT, or not just the one we're doing the use case in. We're going to make sure everyone does fundamentals training. I think, he talked about things like, I think they used LinkedIn Learning. He said they were piecing it together, but they also brought in someone, I don't know if Sarah, the role was officially head of AI, but it was essentially someone who had been doing that role at another company. So they've brought them onto their leadership team, really giving exactly like I liked Chris, your burn at both ends. They're burning at both ends. They're going, as our executive, this is important. For people on the ground, this is important. We're not going to leave anyone behind. And then by doing that, they've found that the actual people running the processes in the organization are the ones coming up with this is how we want to use it. This is the impact it will have, rather than being told this is the use case we should start with because, someone else has said, oh, other companies are doing this first. Because if we were going to, in that scenario, if we were going to go, oh, other companies are doing this first, they would have started with HR, because that's what everyone says to start with. So yeah, love that example.
I think it's a great career opportunity for those the community champions as well, isn't it? I remember years ago working in a bank in a call center, and when new systems came in and those people that championed it, they ended up working in IT, or becoming something more than customer service agent or whatever it was they were doing. So anything else from anyone else, or are we ready for Shamim? Cool. Thanks, Meg. That was brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us so early as well.